Leave me in it though. That
Wanted to get in it. That was
that was a huge ball.
When they do it in Anaheim, they do it in one day. But here it takes like 5 years of water.
You got to do water. It takes so long to bring the water down.
All right, I'll call the meeting. Ready? Let's try again. All right, I'll call the meeting to order for the April 29th study session. Madam Clerk, roll call, please. And I know Mayor Pro Tem is running in, hopefully, as we speak.
The record will reflect that all members of council will be here.
We'll be here. Okay, great. Let's go with that. Okay, so we're now going to go to current business. And the first item is clarification of items on the consent calendar. Councilmember Wygan, do you need any clarification regarding any items on the consent calendar?
No, I do not.
Councilmember Bartow? Councilmember Grant?
None.
Councilmember Blanc?
I have none.
Councilmember Weber?
None.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem will say none, and then myself, I have none. So next is a presentation from staff on Lower Castaways redevelopment and city pool options. So Simone Georges, let's take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, council members. Simone Georges, Assistant City Manager, and with me is Sean Levin, Recreation and Senior Services Director. Want to talk to you about the Lower Castaways project. So if you recall, back in February, the City Council formed a Lower Castaways Park ad hoc committee. And the sole function of the committee was to look at Lower Castaways and focus on how to redevelop that project site. The ad hoc committee focused a lot of attention on developing an aquatic facility for that site. And then after we've spent a lot of time with our consultants, we brought that aquatic facility back to City Council in October of 2024 to get feedback from all of you and get your input on what to do with the aquatic facility. Again, this was a conceptual design. So back in October, the council gave us some direction and said, go ahead and move forward with doing the environmental studies, getting proposals for construction documents, entitlement, and do some community outreach. So since October, Public Works and the community development staff have received proposals through an RFP process to develop an EIR, an environmental impact report, and the Public Works was able to get the architectural design and the structural design bids and proposals to develop construction documents. In addition to, the Recreation and Senior Services Department has formed, through their commission, PB&R Commission, formed an ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee did have a community meeting, did a little public outreach. I attended, Sean attended. A lot of people showed up to that meeting. Was very positive reception at that meeting. Some a little bit of criticism, some comments that came out of it, but it was really a productive meeting. So we're back here today to talk to the City Council and try to get further direction from the City Council. What would you like us to do? And we've heard a lot of feedback from council members, from the community. Do you want us to move forward with these proposals that we have from consultants to go ahead and focus on an aquatic facility at the Lower Castaways? Do you want us to look for a new location for an aquatic facility? Do you want us to have a look at alternative uses for Lower Castaways? Do you want to form a new ad hoc committee? Your previous ad hoc committee has sunsetted because they've already provided the recommendation. So if the council wants to form a new ad hoc committee, we'd have to come back at a future council meeting with a resolution to do that. So we'll leave it up to the City Council. We're just looking for some more direction, Mayor.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, my input on this before we get into it, because I think we can still spend some time having a conversation about an aquatic complex, whether it's Lower Castaways or not. I don't know the general consensus, so we can do a straw vote, but I think from my personal perspective, I think an ad hoc committee would be great to reform an ad hoc, to go back through that process, to understand, one, with community input, if a pool is still wanted and necessary in a community like Newport Beach. If so, great. Is it Lower Castaways? Can it be something else? So in my vision, I think this would be a two-pronged approach. The ad hoc committee could, one, start with taking a look at Lower Castaways. What's the best use for Lower Castaways? Is it a pool? Is it not a pool? And then secondly, if Lower Castaways is not going to be a pool, what could that use be to go out for RFP, get some outside support on that as well? And then ultimately, do we look at a community pool somewhere maybe, for me personally, I think on the west side, we don't have a West Newport Community Center, so the ad hoc could take a look and see what that looks like. So I think it'd be a two-pronged approach. One, what can lower castaways be? If it's a pool, if it's not. And then secondly, continuing down that path with an aquatic facility. If it's not that location, where on the west side potentially could we put that? I don't know. Noah, Councilmember Blom, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I think it was said very well by the mayor at that point that, you know, it's wonderful to go out for these projects, hear the feedback from the community, make those assessments, and I think that's kind of the point we're at right now. And so I'm very thankful for the mayor bringing this back, looking at some of these other approaches. You know, I think one of the biggest things from the community was traffic. How do we best deal with that? And I think this is why this is a community forum, that we go out and try to see what those comments look like. So, I love the idea of reforming the ad hoc committee, looking at some other alternate locations that have a better ingress and egress, and what we can do to keep the historical nature of kind of the birth of Newport alive and bring something there that's not just a construction site.
Yeah, dirt staging lot.
But
for heavy equipment.
I agree. We're looking to capitalize on what best fits the residents and visitors alike. So, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, and I think this ad hoc, I'd love to have some community members on it as well. So have maybe 3 council members and then have some members, potentially the Harbor Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, and then some public members as well. So having an ad hoc and then having public input that could attend the meetings as well, I think that would go a long way. I do have some comments I'll reserve for a minute, but Councilmember Wagon, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think you just hammered where I was going to go with that. I think maybe one planning commissioner. Now, you mentioned Harbor. I didn't even think of that, so it's a great idea. One PV&R commissioner, maybe somebody out in the public. I don't know would they need to apply for that, or can we pull from existing?
Maybe that's a city attorney question. Do we have to go out to the public, and if we were polling members of the public for this ad hoc?
Yeah, typically it's the process you'd use unless you wanted to pick somebody from another, board or commission to be on it.
Yeah.
So if we pick somebody from some board or commissions and then we wanted another member outside of that from the public, they'd have to apply?
Yeah, typically that's the process you'd use.
Okay. All right, good.
And then would it be appropriate to just hammer out that the location at Castaways is kind of done for a pool, or do you want the ad hoc to determine that?
I mean, if I was reading the tea leaves, I'd say we're probably looking at an alternative location for a pool.
Right.
But I would like the committee to, I still think
Formally
personally
close
it's a wonderful location, but I'm not married to that site. I think we'd all agree something needs to happen there, the most historic site in the city.
Right.
So if it's not going to be a pool, it still has to have some kind of community or public benefit. But I think the committee would then be quickly looking at going out for RFPs for that location to do something else there if it was outside, if it was a public-private partnership, whatever that looks like. And then also the committee would then quickly look at alternative sites for an aquatic center.
Okay, so two-prong approach
Correct.
for this ad hoc.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think perhaps the airport area is an area to look up too for a potential pool site. So if we're adding comment here, that's going to be an area that's redeveloped. We have ample parking. I think there's some sites there that we could look at for addressing that. It's kind of in between both parts of town.
Yeah.
So just the potential there.
Okay. From a process standpoint, do you want to continue to talk about the aquatic? I mean, Sean Levin's here, obviously, from Parks and Rec. I'd like to kind of talk a little bit more about, for the benefit of the timing of what it looks like from programming. I know you've done some homework on this. I think it'd be good to hear what that would look like.
As far as the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, or just the, programming of aquatic center, what that could look like.
Well, I mean, in general, like we were talking before, I think there's a huge demand in this community for more pool time.
Yeah.
And it helps everybody, the competitive versus the community pool side. So, yeah, I still think this is a need in this community that I'd love to pursue for the community. So I'm still really in favor and recommend pursuing a pool. If this isn't the location, then I think, we can look around and find a suitable location somewhere else in the city.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Yeah, I just jotted down some notes, and Mr. Levin, I agree with you on these things. And when you talk about going out, getting public input, creating this aquatic destination, I totally agree with you as far as having a program pool and you look at something like this and you see the current structure, do you know the percentages of how many people from out of town are using the pool or what those numbers look like?
We pulled those numbers. So this was last year. So swim lessons, this is at Marion Burdenson and Newport Harbor High. Swim lessons, you can see 71% of the users were for lessons were residents, 29% non-residents, and then the further breakdown, most of it's Newport Mesa, which I kind of look at as Newport Beach when you got the school district and east side and everything kind of, bleeds over. So the vast majority of our users are local. And then we also have, if you want to go to the next slide there, this is lap swim. So similar, you got about 70% Newport Mesa lap swimming, and you see the other breakdowns of the other adjacent cities that are utilizing the pool for lap swim over at Marion Burdenson.
Okay. And Newport Harbor's closed right now at reconstruction on their pool?
Yeah.
The compaction issues, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's always an issue when the pool's closed. And
Yeah.
it happens a lot.
Yeah.
There's projects at one of the, usually during the summer, there always seems to be a project going on, whether the boilers go down or the plaster's getting redone. They're just a lot of maintenance. They're older pools.
Okay. Yeah, and I think some other factors when you talk about two major determinants when you're talking about a pool is depth and water temperature, obviously, when you talk about...
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of different factors between a competition pool and a community pool. And the other big wrinkle with trying to mix the two is right now when a tournament comes in, like on the weekend, it wipes out all the lap swim, any of the programs that are going on, they're just off the board if there's a competition. So separating those, it helps everybody. It helps the competitive community too if we were out of the high school pools, because then they would get all that time.
Okay. Yeah, when you look at recreation, instruction, competition, therapy, there's so many things that happen within.
Yeah, we can do a lot more for the community if we had our own pool, especially for seniors.
Yeah, for sure. Evelyn Hart's dream.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, improve community wellness, aquatic safety. I was reading a stat from 2020 to 2022. They said 4,500 people died of drowning in this country, and over 900 were children. So I know the junior guards could certainly have access to something like this when it comes to testing and kind of the mission that they're looking into as well.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. All right, any other comments up here? Okay. Very well. Let's go out to public comment on this issue.
Good afternoon, Adam Leverance. I'm liking that I hear some receptiveness to reciting this to another location. I've been to a number of meetings where this has been discussed, and I think almost everybody is in favor of a pool, just not here. The only opposition I've heard is to the cost, and that's been a limited number of people. But you've heard me talk about what the Lower Castaway site is planned for. I think planning for that isn't the priority for the constituents. I think the pool is more of what got people in the building here and over at Marina Park, so I'd kind of focus more towards that. And just to affirm the thoughts of citing this somewhere else, there's a General Plan Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow for the subcommittee Harbor Bays and Beaches, and there's a draft of 9 pages for the general plan, again reaffirming that this type of a property of Lower Castaways is for water, coastal, harbor-dependent uses, and it mentions things like boating, sailing, windsurfing, angling, kayaking, rowing, paddle boarding, etc. And as I've noted, if you contend that a pool is a coastal dependent use, I encourage you to look at satellite images of Denver, Vegas, and Phoenix, and you'll see plenty of pools nowhere near the coast. So I would like to see Lower Castaways used for something. There's such limited waterfront property, whereas a pool can be anywhere, and also up in the sun, maybe on the bluff rather than down here where it's foggy a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier, and I agree that developing a new aquatic center is probably a good idea, provided the cost is not prohibitive. But I was surprised to hear that the public reaction to the Lower Castaways pool proposal was mostly positive at the PBR meeting. I did attend that meeting, and like Councilmember Blom, my impression was the vast majority of the public comment was consternation over what people thought would be an unmanageable traffic problem that it would create at that location. And then one other thing I have not heard at that presentation or any of the other meetings is actually the zoning that it has currently in our coastal land use plan, which is not the correct zoning for an aquatic facility. And so the city would have to get permission from the Coastal Commission to change the land use designation. And I think you've heard at a previous meeting that the staff got a positive reaction to that, but I would question whether that was really positive and whether they would go along with this use in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker, please.
Go ahead. Okay, well, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Brad Rollins. I'm a proud resident of Newport Beach for 40 years and have been proudly swimming in Corona del Mar for the last 25 years. Personally, I don't care where the pool is, Castaways, Oasis. All I know is we have the demand for it, as you so well have identified. I'd like to make one additional request, and that is the maintenance of the Corona del Mar facility is not what it should be. If there's any pressure that you can put on the school district, the restrooms are an absolute mess. Need attention. So anyway, good luck with this decision. It's important.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Stapleton and members of the council, I'm Robin Sinclair, and I live in Newport Beach, and I also was a previous Parks, Beach, and Recreation Commission back in the 90s. I commend you for considering this. I don't have a vested interest in the Castaways project. I think it's an eyesore. I think something needs to happen, but I feel very strongly that we cannot rely on the high schools for a public pool. I think that, as you said, there's other things that need to be done at the schools, and those kids take top priority. So I just want it on record. I do swim at the YMCA, and we have space for 20 people at a time. And if you don't sign up for a class in the first literal 5 seconds, 48 hours before a class opens up, you don't get in. So there's a huge demand for seniors to be swimming safely. And I think even though we have a wonderful ocean, that's not a place to swim laps or to have aquatic classes. So I just want it on record that whatever it takes, I think the city of Newport Beach deserves to have a public pool for everybody. So thank you.
Terrific, thank you.
Councilman, thank you. My name's Gary Hill. I've lived within a mile of the Castaways Park for 71 years. I'm an active swimmer. I currently have to swim at Costa Mesa. That pool is very small and it's very tough to get in. So I'm a huge proponent of putting it at the Castaways, and I definitely think we need a new pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Love these public comments. This is great. No one's worried about the 3-minute time. I like it. Yeah, next speaker, please.
Mayor Stapleton and council members, my name is Earl Craig. I live in Newport Beach and have been swimming at Corona del Mar high school pool for the last 20 years. I am definitely a proponent of a pool for Newport Beach. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. All right, any other comments on this item? Commissioner?
Mayor Stapleton and City Council members, my name is David Granoff. I am an ex-Parks, Beaches, and Rec Commissioner for 8 years, and this came up in front of us, and we had ad hoc committees, and we tried to move this forward. I was in full support of it. I think a swimming pool is necessary in this city. You hear things that, oh, why don't people swim in the ocean? But as a guy who has swam from Alcatraz 15 times, you can't train in the ocean. You can kind of do a couple of practice runs, but swimming laps is where you need to do that. And I'm personally in favor of the Castaways. I think not only as a public pool site, but as a facility that could be used for other venues, just like the Junior Guards facility has the ability to be rented for other things. So I think we need a pool definitely. If the Castaways could be available and traffic could be worked out, that would be great. And if not, somewhere's for sure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Once a commissioner, always a commissioner. Any other speakers? Okay, terrific. I will bring it back up here then. I will, what do you want to do, a motion on this? We need a straw vote? Okay. I'll make a motion that we create an ad hoc committee, 3 council members and 4 members of the public. Mr. Blum, second. Discussion, all in favor?
You said some PBNR and Harbor Commission members. You want, how many of those?
I kind of like what, I think planning, PBNR, and Harbor, one from each one of those. So then we'll have 1 member at large from the public outside of that.
And I think probably it would be prudent for each one of those commissions just to choose within themselves, right? That would be normal protocol on that? Yeah. Would it be us having to choose one from there, or would it be them
typically
choosing?
the mayor would
Yeah, I think the mayor would have the
select, and
prerogative
then
to.
the council would confirm. That's typically the way we'd do it.
Just wanted a confirmed process.
Okay.
I'm fine with
Are you
it.
good with that amendment?
That's perfect.
And then
Okay.
how many of the public do you want?
1? I think a 7-person committee would be
that-
great.
Mayor is us. so
Yeah.
That's fine.
Are there requirements for the member of the public, or how, in terms of when we go out to notice on that?
No, I don't. Anybody who's passionate about it would be willing to apply, I think would be appropriate. Yeah.
What would be the time frame on that you could get that process done?
Well, we'd need to create the resolution that creates the ad hoc committee, and then I can do the vacancy notice.
And what's that, like 30 days or?
I could do a 2-week turnaround and then work with the mayor on appointments if it's going to require council, a committee review or anything like that.
Within the next month or so. Certainly approve it next meeting and go as quickly as we can. Okay. We want this built for the summer. It could be above ground. It's
28,
fine.
yes, the summer of
2028
Exactly.
summer, yes, exactly. Okay, so we got an amendment, friendly amendment. We're good with that. Okay.
We can do a hand vote.
All those in favor?
It's
Okay.
unanimous, 7-0.
Terrific. Okay. We're adjourned for 7 minutes. We'll be back at 4:30. Thank you for coming. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. For the April 29th regular City Council meeting, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Okay, terrific. Now's the time for the invocation by Councilmember Bartow.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for getting us here today safely. We thank you for those who protect us in the community, who give their time, who give their safety for others. We are so blessed to live in the beautiful city of Newport Beach, and we are so blessed to have leaders who care so much about all of our citizens. Please continue to bless our beautiful city, to inspire our leadership to make the best decisions, and to continue to care for the citizens of Newport Beach. Amen.
All right, Councilmember Weber, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, terrific. So now's my favorite part of the meeting. Now it's time for the presentations of the history of our great city, Newport Beach. And for those of you who haven't been here before, as your mayor, my theme for 2025 is all about celebrate Newport. And what better way to do that than celebrate our first responders? So I think Chief Boyles is going to kick us off, our fire chief. And then we have Chief O'Rourke here too with the lifeguard department. The foundation, the lifeguard department was founded, so we're doing chronological order. We started in 1870 with the birthplace of Newport Beach with Lower Castaways. And we're working our way through the early 1900s, and now we're in 1923, the formation of the Newport Beach Lifeguard Department. So, Chief Boyles, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We are in 1923, so we're going to highlight the lifeguards tonight. I know my name is on the presentation, but I felt that, or we felt that it would be best for our chief lifeguard, Brian O'Rourke, to take you through the 102-year history of our lifeguards. So I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Chief Boyles, Mayor Stapleton, council members. Brian O'Rourke, Assistant Chief Lifeguard Operations. It's just an honor to be here to get to share some history of the Newport Beach Lifeguards, to celebrate this amazing service, if you will. The last 102 years of this department. When I was putting this together, I thought about the whole 102 years and some things that just have never changed in here. The landscape of our city has changed. The staff has changed, but things that really haven't changed here is our incredible beaches in the city that sit on the Pacific Ocean. That is just so amazing. Our lifeguards who have served over 102 years in these beaches, they keep serving with complete honor and dedication to the city. Our city leaders, our city staff, all of our department heads here, our city departments, our city staff who make Newport Beach and this community what it is, and that's absolutely the best in the world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the why we have lifeguards here, pretty obvious, and then go into the history a bit in the present moment. So this is an amazing picture right here. This is a massive rip current off of 15th Street. You can see the church steeple in the background of 15th Street of Our Lady of Mount Carmel there. And all those black dots you see in that white choppy water are people. In this next slide, you can see them highlighted. There's 13 of them, and all those people are in big trouble right there. I would say that at this point, they're panicking. The drowning process is definitely starting to set in. And I don't know what the outcome was. This was taken in 1965 off of the back of the Sea-Watch rescue boat. But I'm confident that they made it safely back to their loved ones that day. But these occurrences happen every day. And even right now, we have big surf down at our beach that are producing these rip currents. So that's what our lifeguards do. We're here to prevent people from drowning out in the Pacific Ocean. So Chief Boyles, we talked about, a little bit about when the service started. And in 1923, the service was voted and approved to come into existence by, I think it was the Board of Trustees back then, now City Council. And we started off with the fire department, and you can see this is a great old picture, and it says Engine Company number 1. And if you look at the blurry letters, it's the Fire and Life Saving Service there. So we started off with the fire department, and we kept on growing. So this is the first picture, or the picture of the first class of lifeguards as a department. So, you know, you look at these young people right here in 1923, and the things they must have done must have been really amazing in this community with limited equipment and resources. I'm sure that all of them complete legends in their own right. A little bit of where a lot of the lifeguarding started at our beaches took place in Balboa. And I thought this picture was pretty cool because you see there's a lifeguard tower and a boat. So not only did our lifeguards back in that time have to be excellent aquatic rescue personnel, but they also had to be innovative. They had to create their own equipment. And not even that, they had to be skilled at building it. So that boat on the beach, it's a dory boat that they used to have to row out to get victims. So a pretty interesting time compared to now. As we move through time, this picture was in the mid-50s. Our staff started increasing. People started visiting our beaches, and in all sorts of different places of in through Newport, and you can see that we have a lifeguard Jeep in this picture, and 6.2 miles of beach. They realized that they started having to patrol all these other areas, and just doing it by foot wasn't really working. As we moved into the 50s, the 50s, rescue boats were introduced. So you can see they could be very effective, like in that picture with the massive rip current and all those 13 people. And I can tell you that we've had those boats full of people on them many a time, and they are a great tool for us. And then one thing I wanted to mention in this picture is, once again, the people who served in our department, they've gone on to great things in service, from everywhere from public safety to teaching to the military. And this gentleman jumping out of the boat, we're real proud of him. He went into the Navy right before September 11th, and he retired about 5 years ago as a commander of the SEAL team. So we've had a lot of people go on to big things, and they all say lifeguards was a reason that they got their start in their future careers. So moving on, we need to put lifeguard headquarters in here. This was built in 1965. There's still some structure left on the current lifeguard headquarters, believe it or not. There's a back wall with some of the cast iron from when they had the lettering on the back. It's pretty cool. But this building, built in, as a home for our lifeguards, it was built at a place where it has the best observation for our entire beaches. I mean, I can tell you the stories of people who've been saved by people just looking out those windows and directing our lifeguards to go rescue them. So that was a great enhancement to our service in the 60s. And then moving on, going from that picture in 1923 to our current staff here of 200 seasonal ocean lifeguards and permanent staff members, completely needed to protect the 8 to 10 million estimated visitors to Newport Beach and to manage our junior guard program. So we've definitely expanded over the years, and really super proud of our current staff. And today I thought this picture would be cool because we're still with the fire department. And I like it because, well, one of the lifeguard trucks right in the front and center there, but just a beautiful shot. We got great resources in the city. So beyond that, I'm gonna our operations. I'm gonna jump into our junior guard program here, and this picture, probably in the late '80s. The junior guard program started in 1984 with 2 instructors and 50 kids. And what's really neat about this picture, one, council member Wigan, this is your instructor up there, John Mitchell. I know we've talked about that. I don't know if you're in that picture. And then, are you in that picture?
That one, but that's Mitchell, right? Up in the
Okay, yeah. So there's John Mitchell. He was the lifeguard captain. He retired a while ago. And then Graham Harvey is one of the kids standing right next to him, who was the junior guard Foundation president, who's responsible for spearheading the junior guard building. So pretty cool. And just a side note, I'd like to mention Councilman Wigan. He is a hard charger. I think you might get the lifeguard hard charging award. He's done every junior guard event this year, including the Great Lundy Ironman. And he recently went through lifeguard tryouts, and you would have made it too. So, but I mean,
I hope that's not saying anything about our life.
I know. Well, no, but you did it with a great attitude, and it was challenging conditions. So, anyways,
Looking forward to
much
next
respect to you and so forth. So, from 50 junior lifeguards, 2 instructors to this today. Currently, right now, sitting in registration, we have 1,458 kids registered for junior guards. We're going to need about 50 staff ocean lifeguards to manage it. But, as we say in a junior lifeguard program, 2025, we're going to celebrate, and it's going to be super epic. And, I had to mention the building in here. What a great community project, from our city staff, once again, to the foundation, to all the donors. This community is amazing, and Junior Guards has a home, and we're just so proud of it. And here's another shot of it, an aerial shot from the over the Newport or the Balboa Pier area. So we're going to have a lot more good times down there, and so moving on. So I thought I'd end this presentation here with the most significant event that happened, as far as I'm concerned, in the Newport Beach lifeguards and in Newport in our community, and that was the line of duty death of Ben Carlson, who made a rescue, saving somebody else in just massive, treacherous surf. So his story is huge in the history of our department and city, and we miss Ben. We don't mourn him anymore as a department or grieve. We miss him, but I think this community celebrates Ben now with honor and duty and courage and strength and service, and we're proud of Ben and the legacy. And I know Ben's legacy is a part of all of us in this community. Here's the last picture of our community as we celebrated Ben's life, and it was an amazing time, and that we'll never forget. And Ben's legacy will continue on forever. So with that was a real brief history, a real brief look at our present moment. So, let's celebrate Newport this year in 2025. I think that's great, and we'll keep steering this ship forward. I know all of us. And we're going to do what we're going to do, and that is making Newport Beach the best city in the world. So that's it. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Chief. I am looking forward to the 31-mile crossing on September 13th. I've begun my training for the Ben Carlson paddle to prone my way from Catalina. So maybe Councilman Wigan will join me.
I think you're on that one.
Okay. Yeah, careful what you say years ago. And Chief, are there any Jeeps left out there?
There's no. I did have the fortune to drive with it. No more Jeeps. We have
Oh
all.
man, we don't have any of those hidden anywhere in the city yard or anything. That'd be great for the Balboa Island Parade.
Do you have one in your garage?
I do not. No, I need one. Yeah, maybe. All right. Well, thank you, Chief. That was well done, and a great history of the city of Newport Beach for our lifeguard department. So congratulations on 102 years. Well done. Okay, now's the time for council announcements, oral reports from council members on committee activities, and the time for council members to request an A1 item to be placed on a future agenda. Councilmember Wigan, do you have anything to announce or report?
None at this time, and as Councilmember Blom says, I'm banished from A1s at the moment. So.
I'll leave that alone. Councilmember Bartow.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Grant.
I would report on a number of things that happened in our city over the last couple weeks. We were fortunate to add 2 renovated parks in our city, one at Newport Elementary, which I attended the ribbon cutting with Councilmember Bartow, as well as somebody else will report more fully, the San Miguel Park grand opening, which was an epic opportunity for us. We also had 2 important Oasis Senior Center events, the volunteer lunch, which is always a very poignant event to see all the people that volunteer for our seniors, and then the Oasis Sailing Club opening day, which I attended with Councilmember Bardo, and Mayor Stapleton. I was very fortunate to attend the Shred, E-Waste, and Compost event. It was a magnificent showing by our city staff. They all came in on Saturdays. It's a big event with people coming with their e-waste and shred to utilize our services, and then we hand out compost. I think it's funny, the one picture that on the bottom left, at least on my side here, is sort of the classic Newport Beach picture of somebody on their e-bike collecting their compost, and so that was fun to see. I also attended the SPAWN, Still Protecting Our Newport annual meeting that they had where they gave a lot of information about sea level rise, and important takeaway from that was that it looks like the scaling back of sea level rise is occurring in the scientific community, so we may have more time to deal with those issues as we move forward into the next generation. We had a great Newport Beach Police Department promotion and swearing in ceremony. Obviously, we have a new police chief who was finally sworn in formally. And I also attended yesterday the grand opening of the JSX Jet Company. So that was a fun event and a nice addition to our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Blom?
Not my style, thank you.
Of course. Councilmember Weber?
None.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman?
Thank you, Mayor. I am thrilled to report that Corona Del Mar's first Third Thursdays event was a huge success.
You're doing great.
It must be me. It was wonderful to see so many residents excitedly pouring through the village. A special thank you to our library and our fire station that hosted dozens of families through their doors that night. I do hope that everyone will come out for the next one on May 15th. I also wanted to let everyone know on May 6th, the Corona Del Mar Residents Association is hosting their annual meeting at the beautiful Sherman Library and Gardens, which is open to the public. 5 to 6 p.m. is the community social and expo. Then the speaker series begins at 6:15. Our very own Fire Chief Jeff Boyles, followed by Area 4 Commander Lieutenant Gary Clemente, and I will be presenting as well.
Terrific. I got a few things to report, as I do as the mayor on the road, on my circuit. I will say the San Miguel Park, kudos to high school senior Alexis Portillo. She first came to city council in 2019 advocating for universally accessible parks in our city. And the council at the time went and added swings, and now we've got a full park. It was great to see Alexis there, and she was with her sister, and we got on some playground equipment, and I got to show her how quickly government works. 6 years, which I told her was actually pretty fast to get this park built. And she's now she's a senior, going to be heading into her freshman year at Chapman University, so we're going to keep her local, but kudos to her. I did attend the Oasis Sailing Club opening day, which was a phenomenal event, and now the opening days are all happening in the next couple weeks, so that's a great tradition in Newport Beach. I did attend the Newport to Ensenada. We hosted the mayor and the contingency from Ensenada at the Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club. We did some gift exchanges, and then the harbor department took me out the following morning. Thank you, Paul Blank, our harbor master. I was shepherded out there to the starting line off the Balboa Pier, where I watched 120 boats race down safely. We had 10-knot winds that grew to 12 knots by the end of the day. So it was awesome seeing 120 boats and 700 sailors race down to Ensenada. It was a champagne day on the water for all of them. So great conditions. I also attended the Lighthouse Cafe, where they celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And then shortly after that, I went over to El Ranchito on the peninsula, where they celebrated their 50th anniversary on the peninsula. So I think Noah could attest. Any time in the restaurant business is incredible. In 50 years, kudos to them. I also attended the East Bluff Elementary Gala, so it was fun for a guy who doesn't have any kids to be at another elementary gala. But things you do as the mayor, good for them. And then, the Newport Beach Police Department swearing in for our chief minor, so that was a lot of fun. And then today, I attended the Victim Rights event with Attorney District Attorney Todd Spitzer. So a very powerful event for the community. So well done. Okay. Madam Clerk, please read the notice regarding public comments on the consent calendar.
This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 20. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine, will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific answers or specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Okay, terrific. Councilmember Weigand, do you have any items to pull from the consent calendar or conflicts to announce related to items 1 through 20?
I do not.
Councilmember Bartow.
I don't.
Councilmember Grant?
None.
Councilmember Blum?
Amazingly, no.
Oh, surprise. That is not your style. Councilmember Weber?
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Kleinman?
None.
Okay, and myself, I do have a conflict on item number 5 based on real interest on personal residence. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, do we have a motion?
I move the consent calendar, noting the amendments to item 1, the minutes, and the recusal of the mayor on item number 5.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Blum seconds. We'll now have public comments on consent calendar items 1 through 20.
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. Item number 3 on the consent calendar is the introduction of an ordinance that will prohibit the operation or riding of bicycles and other similar vehicles on our city beaches, on the sandy part of them. The comment I wanted to make is that if the city staff had been scrupulously following our city charter, I believe they would have brought this matter to the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission to seek a recommendation about this new policy before bringing it to you. And I think it would have been good if that had happened, because if PBR had reviewed this, it would have given the public a chance to make other suggestions, such as one I saw that you received in writing from somebody other than me, which is it appears even with this ordinance, it will be unclear what our policy is about riding bicycles on the paved walkways, the not sandy ones on our beaches. I think PBR perhaps would have addressed that. The result may have been no different than what you have here, but it would have been the proper procedure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. I will say the same rules apply on the paved boardwalk. Abide by the rules and the speed limit.
And speaking of that paved boardwalk, there is, as of late, been a sign put up, a reader board sign with the solar panels on a little trailer that says 8-mile-an-hour speed limit, strictly enforced. That's appreciated. However, I keep trying to get photographs of adolescents doing wheelies, screaming past there, and they're just too fast. So I don't know what else can be done. And I don't know if the sign maybe encourages speeding at that particular spot, but just know, I mean, one of the scariest things I've seen here is a toddler step out from one of those walls along the boardwalk and just get pasted by a woman on a bicycle. So this is an ongoing problem. I think everybody's aware of it, but it just needs more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers on these items?
My name is Pete Anderson. I live down at 1610 West Ocean Front. I'm representing the Central Newport Beach Community Association. Our president, Maureen Cotton, has got another engagement tonight and couldn't attend. We want to thank you for Ordinance 2025, the bikes on the sand. We think this is important. We also want to thank you for the fact that the police have been looking over the boardwalk and have been ticketing people, which we hadn't seen really much before. And we think this is helping. So, again, thank you for this ordinance. Thank you for the increased enforcement.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other speakers on consent calendar items? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back here. Any additional council comments? Okay, seeing none, let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for item 3, ordinance 2025-6, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Chapter 11.4 Parks, Park Facilities, and Beaches of the Newport Beach Municipal Code related to the use of bicycles, electric bicycles, and other such devices on the beach. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, great. Now is the time for public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. Any public comments on agenda and non-agenda items? Okay, great. Seeing none, we're going to now move into the public hearing items. Councilmember Wygan, do you have any ex parte communication to disclose for any of the public hearing items?
Yes, on item number 22, I met with the owner and with consultant of Five Crowns.
Okay, terrific. Councilmember Bartow.
Yes, I also met with the owner of Five Crowns.
Of Five Crowns? Okay. Councilmember Grant.
No.
Councilmember Blum.
On item 22, I had a brief conversation with the owner.
Okay. Councilmember Weber.
This is not when I have a conflict, right?
No.
Okay, then no.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Kleiman.
I spoke with both the applicant and the appellant.
Okay, terrific. And myself, regarding item 23, I met with the Irvine Company, and our conversation is fully reflected in the written record. Okay, item number 21 is Resolution 2025-17, revising certain fees within the schedule of rents, fines, and fees. And I think we have a conflict. Not on this one, no. Okay, do we need a staff report or have a staff report? Does anyone want a staff report on this item? Okay, seeing no staff report requested, do council members have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll now open this public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item?
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. As I explained in writing, there is one portion of this which has to do with library fees that appears on page 21-133 of your packet. And I believe it would be useful for this page to reference the fact that our city charter empowers the Board of Library Trustees rather than the City Council with setting the fees for the library. And so people wanting to know what the fees in the library actually are should be looking at the library page, which has those fees set by the Board of Library Trustees. In the very unusual circumstance that a library user would not be looking at that page, but actually seeking this particular schedule, I think on that page, fee number 17 called Materials Use, saying that we charge $1 per video or book per unit, would be quite confusing, because people going to the library when they take a book off the shelf, there is not somebody following them and charging $1 when they do that. If you look at the library website, you'll find that that is actually a charge for renting certain videos, and the charge is per video per day. And there was a time in the past when the library had rental books, bestsellers, people who wanted to jump to the head of the line to get the free copy could rent a copy. I don't believe they do that anymore. But the definitive source of fees to the library is the library website or page within our city website. And I think this should reference that because those are the fees set by our board. Thank you.
Do you have any comments on that? None? Okay. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none. Any additional comments, questions by council? No? Okay, great. Do we have a motion for this item? I'll make the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Councilmember, was that you, Blum?
Yeah.
Okay. First by me, second by Blum. Let's vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, terrific. Item 22 is a resolution 2025-18, appeal of a limited term permit and coastal development permit for the Five Crowns temporary patio. Does anyone have a conflict on this item 22?
I do.
You do?
Yes,
Okay.
I need to recuse myself because Ryan Wilson is a client of our business and source of income.
Okay, terrific. Any other conflicts? Okay, seeing none. Free to leave. Okay, let's go ahead and begin with staff report. Jaime?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Stapleton, members of the council. My name is Jaime Murillo, Deputy Director of Community Development. With me, I have Assistant Planner Melinda Whalen. She was the project manager on this application request, and she has a brief presentation to share for your consideration on this item tonight.
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Melinda Whalen, Planning Division. So this is the Five Crowns Temporary Outdoor Dining Appeal, like Jaime said. And at first, I want to highlight the area of the existing Five Crowns restaurant. So this is the zoning map, and it shows that Five Crowns is within the commercial corridor along East Coast Highway. And the commercial corridor provides a lot of commercial visitor serving and neighborhood serving uses, including several restaurants. And it's also a mixed use area because the commercial corridor is adjacent to residential neighborhoods. So this is the existing Five Crowns restaurant between Hazel and Poppy. And across Poppy is the off-site parking for Five Crowns restaurant. And this is the existing restaurant layout. There is an existing outdoor dining area that was approved with the original plans for the restaurant. And the red indicates the expanded outdoor dining in the garden area. So a restaurant has existed at the site since the 1930s, but Five Crowns opened in 1965 with a piano bar and outdoor dining. In 1977, the restaurant proposed an addition, and it was the opportunity to establish a use permit and required off-site parking. The off-site lot provides a minimum 87 spaces with valet service provided at all times. The use permit did not limit the hours of operation or live entertainment, but the original plans did outline the outdoor area and the outdoor dining. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, emergency temporary use permits were provided by the city to support businesses, especially restaurants, and they allowed the businesses to move their operations to the outside and expand their operations to the outside to keep them up and running during this time. Five Crowns ETUP was approved in 2020, and it allowed the expanded outdoor dining patio within an existing covered area and garden area. And their ETUP expired in 2021, but the city also provided limited term permits, and it was a way to provide restaurants some more time with their emergency patios and to allow them to prepare for conditional use permit amendments if they were choosing to keep the patios permanently. So the proposed project today is the expanded area. It includes private events, 75 or more, with live entertainment, and those are limited to 4 times per month. And then also the expanded outdoor dining. It closes by 9 p.m. during the weekdays and 10 p.m. on the weekends. And additionally, there's design features that will mitigate noise, a sound attenuation wall, a gate on Hazel, and dense shrubbery, as well as acoustical paneling in the covered patio, and requirements for the location of the speakers and the type of music that is used. And the approval is for 1 year, and with a possible 1-year extension. And if they do want to keep the use permanent with the events and the expanded outdoor dining, they will need a use permit amendment. So the zoning administrator is required to approve the limited term permits. The project went to the zoning administrator on July 25th, 2024, at which time the appellant expressed concerns regarding noise and potential impacts to the neighborhood and the adequacy of a noise study provided by the applicant. Ultimately, the zoning administrator approved the application, but added several conditions of approval, as well as the design features in the noise report. Those conditions address lighting, potential loitering, and noise. The application was appealed to the Planning Commission and heard on December 5th, 2024. The acoustical engineer for the applicant prepared a presentation and confirmed the design features that are conditioned. And 2 neighbors spoke in support of the project. The appellant reiterated the concerns regarding the noise, but ultimately the Planning Commission approved the project and concurred with the zoning administrator with the additional conditions of approval and the design features. So these are the overall appeal concerns, and there's a detailed analysis provided in the staff report, and I'm happy to go over any of those details or answer any questions. But they were related to using the limited term permit versus a use permit amendment at this time, impacts to parking from the expanded area and the private events, inconsistency with the emergency temporary use permit conditions, the history of complaints regarding noise and impact to the neighborhood, and then also use of the expanding area with events related to noise, and the adequacy of the noise report. The appellant and the applicant also have a presentation that will go over these. Now, in conclusion, the outdoor dining has always been used, but the garden area was never approved for dining or live entertainment. That being said, private parties are ancillary to most restaurants, and the private parties have historically been used in the interior, been provided in the interior of the restaurant and the outdoor dining patio. But using the garden area for weddings and events with live entertainment on a regular basis will require an amendment to the conditional use permit. What's before you today is a limited duration permit, and it provides a trial period for the restaurant. So it provides additional conditions that are not a part of the use permit on hours and private events with entertainment, and there's substantial design features that will mitigate the noise. The parking is addressed with the valet off-site lot, and it provides more parking than any other restaurant. Additionally, this area is known for walk-up traffic with the residential adjacent the Corona Del Mar corridor. And staff recommends that the City Council conduct a de novo public hearing and find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15301 under Class 1 existing facilities, and adopt the resolution denying the appeal and upholding the decision of the Planning Commission. And the applicant is here as well as the appellant with present.
Terrific, thank you. We'll go ahead and now open the public hearing. We'll now hear from the applicant. That's fine, yeah. How much time do you guys think you'll need for this?
This live? Presentation, probably 10, 12 minutes?
10
at
minutes?
most, yeah.
Yeah, those are great. 10 minutes would be good. Okay, floor is yours.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Stapleton, council members. Thank you for being here today to talk a little bit about Five Crowns and our long, long history in Corona Del Mar. Please take no offense, but this is actually the debut of our 60th anniversary logo. So as of 2 weeks ago, the restaurant celebrated 60 years of management under my family. So it's a proud moment, and it's a great moment to be here to share that with you. However, we want to talk about the backyard, and particularly our longtime operation in the community and the legacy operation of the backyard area in question. I want to come back, though, that we sincerely believe this is the oldest restaurant in Corona Del Mar, and development of the property began back in 1918. I can say that because it's the original caretaker cottage where I lived for 7 years and brought my 2 girls home from the hospital and raised them with my wife at the time. We saw that engraving on some bricks right along the fireplace. So long tradition on the property. And the history of the Five Crowns specifically was built in roughly 1920-22 by Tilly McCulloch and her daughter Marguerite, which the street in our city bears its name. The building was modeled after an old English inn that actually dates from the 13th century outside of London called Ye Old Bell, particularly the roof lines and the front facade. And it was operated for many years as the Hurley Bell and the Tail of the Cock until the early 1960s. And in that period of time, this was really known as a home for the stars. We have all sorts of great old stories of different Hollywood celebrities that would come in. It was known as a place that was a little bit or just enough outside of Laguna where they could have their private meetings and affairs and what they wanted to without any of the limelight and paparazzi. So long tradition. Originally, before we took it over and operated as a restaurant, there were rooms in the upstairs, corridors and hallways. I can say without question that it is haunted. Noah will attest. And yeah, it's a wonderful space up there. They're friendly ghosts, so don't be as scared. But it's also a piece of the long history and tradition of my family in the Southern California restaurant community. My grandfather, so second generation Richard Frank, took control of the property in 1965. The two families, so Frank and Vandy Camp families, Richard Frank being the son of Lawrence Frank, that's the name of our primary brand, Lowry's the prime rib and Lowry's seasoned salt. Our oldest restaurant, the Tam O'Shanter, is 102 years old this year. And the business actually started in 1915 in downtown LA selling potato chips. That specific business became Vandy Camp's Bakery up and down the West Coast. And then we started having restaurants along the side. 1965 was a special year. On April 14th, opened as the Five Crowns. This was the fifth restaurant in the portfolio at the time, and my great-grandfather, Lawrence, referred to it as the Jewel of the Crown, and certainly a little bit of poetic reference to Corona Del Mar as well. It's been in continuous operation by our family since then, and we are very proud of its legacy in this community. First, I guess I should have started with an intro. Ryan Wilson, I'm CEO of Lowry's Restaurants, fourth generation of our family to manage the business. I live in Newport Beach, raising my kids here. Started Side Door in 2009. That was my little baby as the culinary director at the time. But actually started working at Five Crowns back in 2002, right after my undergrad education up in LA. So I have spent a long time in this restaurant. I love it dearly. I said earlier, I lived behind the restaurant for 7 years. And midway through COVID, it was time to get me and my young family out of a very small, maybe 800 square foot caretaker's cottage. So here we are today talking about this limited term permit on our backyard area. And this all initiated on October 31st of 23, where we submitted this limited term permit to identify with the city and work with the city on the process of formally identifying it. This area has been in operation for well over 30 years as part of our continual use. I personally was married there, and I know countless people in the community have had great celebrations on the space. In fact, we have a picture here from 1968, and you can see that's my grandfather here in front of a big group of what is today the backyard area, celebrating I think it was a coworker birthday party or one of our regular celebrations of tenured coworkers. So it's been a fabric of our community for a long time, and I'm eager to continue to work with the city of properly documenting it and continuing to invest in the space to be, as we have for 60 years, a steward of the community and a real legacy business. As part of this process, we worked very closely for nearly 2 years with RK Engineering on all of the sound studies, multiple sound analyses done and proposed with the city. We can go back and yes, I wanted to point out that Zoning Administrator Zadeba held 2 public hearings. We discussed the situation at length. We've added on multiple additional conditional uses to further restrict our use and to continue to be a better neighbor, but we need to be able to find a balance here so we can keep this really critical component of our business and experience alive for us as operators and as for the community as well. The application came up to Planning Commission in early December. Again, continued to document the conditional uses, and that's where we really looked at some of the limitations on the operation. And I think that the limited term permit was properly decided. And I want to reiterate that we're going back almost 2 years now of significant soft cost, legal costs to move this issue forward. And ultimately, we are here today to make investments in our facility to continue to enhance the neighborhood and to be a great neighbor ourselves. As part of, one of the real benefits of this process, I have re-engaged with many of our neighbors and have met many people in city staff and elected officials as well. And so it's been a great opportunity to get to know the community better. And excited to be working with Councilmember Kleiman on the third Thursday activation of the Corona Del Mar corridor. We're obviously an anchor component of it, and we're excited to continue to work on how we can grow the community. And here's, I think a list of the additional uses that we are, is part of our application process. All of which are not documented in the UP 1822, and that, we're willing to step forward on to, again, be a better neighbor. But it's been a timely, costly process to continue to keep our business really vibrant and active in Corona Del Mar. So with that, we respectfully ask you to uphold the Planning Commission's unanimous approval. And I want to thank you for your time here today. I also want to take a moment and really thank city staff. They've been wonderfully supportive and good to work with, and spend some time on this one. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Do we want council comments on this, or do you want to move to the appellant?
Yeah, probably best just to move the appellant.
Okay. All right, terrific.
I just had a question on his slide, so can I have it brought back when we do that, or I'm happy to do that later?
Okay, we'll do that next. Okay, would the appellant please come forward, and you will have 10 minutes as well.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stapleton and members of council. I appear here to object to both the Planning Commission's findings and city staff findings. And I will say that city staff has been cooperative in everything I've asked them to do to help me find the supporting underlying documentation that dates back many years and has worked cooperatively with me. We have a dispute as to the nature and extent of the proposed limited term use permit. I want to go over a little bit of some points made by the applicant and by Ms. Whalen in terms of her presentation. I want to emphasize some of the factual differences that are in play here. In 1977, UP use permit 1822 was crystal clear. They analyzed the parking extensively. They analyzed the use and timing, number of employees, where the employees were parking, and the patron count. They limited the 5 Crowns square footage, the so-called public space, to 4,800 square feet. At that time, the very same backyard to which the applicant refers measured 1,350 square feet, but they didn't allow them to use, the council did not allow them to use 1,350 square feet. Why? Because of the limitations on the number of patrons. They said you can use 350 square feet. You can have 8 tables in that area. That's it. 350 square feet, ignoring and precluding the use of 1,000 square feet. Any pictures that he shows of people in the 1,000 square feet weren't approved. That wasn't approved by UP 1822. If they were doing so, who knows what the purpose was and whether or not it was a for-profit venture at that time. But what we do know is that the considered approach was, because of the absence of parking, that Five Crowns would be limited to 150 patrons, 350 square feet in the backyard, and the 4,450 square feet in the building itself. They had a piano bar in the building. They had live entertainment, a piano bar. The parking to which staff referred is a parking lot across the street. They do have valet parking. That parking is substandard. I've measured it myself. The spaces are 9 feet in width. They're anywhere between 16 and 18 feet. They're double parked, they're triple parked. It's a novel approach to manage to squeeze 87 cars into that space. It's clear they can't squeeze any more in there unless they're going to stack them on top of one another, which they're not going to do. So the problem here is a fundamental problem, that they have been told by Mr. Roscoe in the summer of 2023, and following the closure of the COVID epidemic, the use of that backyard became huge, disturbing the neighborhood, raucous music, late in the night, live bands, live DJ, just blaring it out, flashing lights, etc. Okay? And it's so much so that in measuring the sound in 2023, the decibels hit above 72 decibels in the community, 72. Your limitations are 55 adjacent to residential. And I want to dispel what I think is a misrepresentation to say mixed use. This is not a mixed use area. This has no mixed use component. There's a commercial component next to a residential component, not a mixed use component. So in 1977, the limitations were crystal clear. The parking was analyzed. Along comes COVID. And with COVID, the ETUP permit, which, if you read it, and I attached the copy to my appeal, which is, I apologize for the length, but I wanted to cover the issues. But in that appeal, if you read the ETUP permit, it is crystal clear. Stops at 9, no increase in patient count, no amplified music outside. That's what it says, those three things. It's undisputed. So they're not to increase patient count. In other words, your patron count, my apologies, patron count. You're not to increase patron count above 150. That's what it says. Why? Because, again, in 1977, they limited the patron count to 150. Why? Because of parking. And even then they waived 30 parking spaces to allow them to open it all in the little garden area, 350 square feet of the garden area. So the purpose of the COVID permit was clear, to allow people to spread out. But they weren't to increase the patient count, they weren't to be there beyond 9, and they weren't to be with amplified sound. Now, I know there's a contention by staff, a suggestion that we're not doing anything different than any other restaurant is doing. That is simply not true. The Bungalow and El Cholo were cited as the two examples by the zoning commissioner. He said, we have a history of operations in Corona del Mar that allows exactly this. I asked him what it was. They wouldn't tell us until they closed the public meeting. Then he introduces El Cholo and Bungalow. But that's not true. You look at, and I've attached their applications and their continued extensions of their permit of use outside, and every one of them says no amplified sound outside. None. So the contention, our dispute as neighbors, is the sound. Now, the house involved 352, the closest house, and 344, the Melman house, they're within 45 to 50 feet. 45 to 50 feet. You have a backyard. Imagine if your neighbor conducted an event with 75 or more people crowded in the backyard with a DJ and a band blaring out above 55 decibels for an extended period of time, to 10 o'clock at night on the weekend, 9 o'clock during the week. So the problem here is sound and light. The same problem identified in 1977. The same problem that you all identified when you granted the extended permits for ETUP at COVID. You didn't allow amplified sound outside then. You shouldn't allow it now. I don't have an objection to them using the 1,350 square feet, assuming they don't jam up the parking. The objection is and remains this amplified sound. Now, they're going to tell you, and they've told you, we've solved that problem. We have this study, RK Engineering. That study was disputed and indeed refuted by our sound study people who said the error in the RK Engineering study is, and by the way, it's never been corrected, is that they failed to account for crowd noise. Crowd noise can add significantly to the decibel count. So they didn't account for crowd noise, putting 50, 60, 75, 80, 100 people in that crowded area. They all start talking over one another, and before you know it, you're at 70, 80, 90 decibels at that source. So they didn't account for crowd noise. They also didn't account for the placement, the historical placement of the amplifiers. They didn't account for the directional. The 352 Hazel has a third floor area. And by the way, all these properties were built before COVID and before this large event traffic and substantial sound, amplified sound started in 2020. 352 Hazel has a third floor. It sits, has an outdoor area, sits right next to the street, 1 foot back of walk, all approved by the city of Newport Beach. And that is within direct line eyesight and earshot, therefore, of the amplified sound coming out of the backyard. Now, let's look at another troubling thing that's going on here, because, I sort of like the predictability of municipal code. I trust you all do as well. The problem is you're not following your own municipal code. Why do I say that? Because the applicant and staff has admitted that they have been operating in this manner since at least 2020. That is, with the loud raucous sound. So they admit consistent historical operation, yet in order for them to apply for a temporary permit, what are your requirements? Well, Municipal Code 20.52.040E says you cannot be operating without waiting for the permit. It says it explicitly, must be applied for 30 days before you start. They admit, all of them admit, staff, the applicant, planning commission ignored it. You are violating your own municipal code if you approve this because they weren't able to apply. They were not eligible to apply, even if they considered it temporary. And by the way, how could it be temporary? They're talking about something that has occurred since 2020 and has occurred, as explained, 200 plus times a year. It's a bedrock principle of their, to hear him talk now, a bedrock principle of their profitability. And yet, that's temporary? Of course it's not. It's not temporary. It doesn't qualify as temporary. The examples of temporary is not limited in time. It's limited by seasonality. It's limited by use, such as a contractor. A contractor has an office or a trailer or parking equipment. That's temporary. This is not temporary by any. May I have just a couple of more minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
That's good. Thank you very much. So I want to just make a couple of final points, and then I'll sit down and be quiet. I think it important to say that you can't approve something that your own municipal code says can't even be applied for. There had to be a 30-day period hiatus before he could apply. They didn't, and yet no one told them to stop. I've raised this issue from the very beginning. How does he qualify? What's going on here? I think that's an important point for you to consider, unless you're going to rewrite that municipal code section. But I think you're bound by it. With respect to our sound engineer, he made clear one important point, and it's an important point that if you were going to approve this at all, which I trust you shouldn't and hope you won't, you would impose a condition, because what Mr. Dickinson, my sound expert, said was, in all of these event-type outdoor settings, it is traditional for the approving body to condition the approval upon sound measuring devices at the source that are publicly available and vetted by the surrounding neighbors' ability to get access to the same information. You should do that here. I've raised this now twice. The Planning Commission didn't allow it. The zoning commissioner didn't, zoning director didn't allow it. But consider that if they want to have this and they say they're going to be quiet, then there should be a sound measurement at the source. It should be available to myself, other neighbors, and it should be available to my expert. In conclusion, I hope you will reconsider and approve the appeal, deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go out to public comments on this item.
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosher. At first, two procedural comments. Earlier, the council members were requested to disclose any ex parte communications they had had before the hearing today. And I wanted to remind you that the purpose of disclosing ex parte communications is not merely to say that you spoke to somebody, but actually to share what you heard from that other party so that all of the decision makers have anything you heard from them that might influence your decision, so that all the decision makers are on the same page and basing their decision on publicly understood information. The second procedural comment I had, and I think your policy A2 requires me to disclose myself that I am a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee and actually on the subcommittee reviewing the noise element. So noise issues are significant to me. And I have noticed when you get an application where there could be a noise issue, as there is here, the city relies on the applicant to provide the noise study. And the public can be reasonably skeptical that if the applicant is the one paying for the noise study, it's going to support their application as a good one. And so in cases where the staff anticipates that there might be controversy, I think it would be very good, and I'm speaking as an individual, not on behalf of the GPAC or its subcommittee, for the city to have an on-call acoustical expert of its own so that it could get an objective analysis of whether the applicant's thing is reasonable or not. In this case, it's not clear to me, and it seems to be disputed, whether the mitigation measures are adequate. I think there's something about how the speakers are going to be located and directed, and the applicant's expert is saying that the creation of a sound wall or installation of one will be adequate to mitigate the noise at the neighboring properties. But some of those, like as we heard, have third floor areas, and it's not clear that the line of sight, I doubt that the wall is tall enough to block the line of sight. So I think there might need to be additional conditions if they're going to meet our sound ordinance to actually put their equipment where it cannot be seen from those habitable areas. And perhaps they need directional speakers, I don't know. But fortunately, it's a trial period. I guess that will all work out. The other comment I had, which is very trivial, if you've actually read the conditions of approval, you will see that number 2 and number 20 are the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. I guess doubly reminding somebody is okay, but I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this item? Anyone else planning on speaking on this? Okay, yeah, we'll take this as our last speaker. Okay. Here. Go. Yeah, it's fine.
Hi, my name is Dwight Manley. I live in Brea and have a house in Corona Del Mar on Ocean Boulevard. I bought my first house in Newport Beach in 1987. I've had houses on Seashore, in Pelican Crest, where I built Big Canyon, belonged to Big Canyon for 33 years. I have a lot of unique events related to Brea and Newport Beach, our downtown. The cottages were emulated from Corona Del Mar. Bill Watt built them because Ray Watt had the shopping center next door in the 80s. We have our downtown with Imperial Highway. You have Pacific Coast Highway. We have a now vibrant dining entertainment district. We have a movie theater. You have a movie theater. And for 25 years, I've been dealing with, as the majority owner of the downtown, matters like this. And it's bizarre deja vu because we have the same situation you have here. There's one person that can't sleep at night because something's wrong, whether it's a light post is crooked, a noise came out of a door at 10:30, whatever it is, there's issues. We deal with them. I'm at City Hall a lot, Planning Commission, City Council, whatever it is, City Attorney matters. And in this situation, what Ryan said can't be repeated enough. This is a legacy business. This is something that Corona Del Mar should do whatever it can to protect, to keep it successful for 50 more years. Businesses, especially restaurants in this state, are dropping like flies. This is something, we walk down Poppy to that, go in the side door, have dinner, flip-flops and shorts, my wife and I, and it's the reason we bought that house. It's the reason that City Hall moved here from the peninsula. This community's soul and heart is Corona Del Mar. That's where the people go to, come from, talk about, take the pictures. We have a sidewalk in front of our house. The people are walking by all the time. Fortunately, we're on the side that they're behind our house so we can see the ocean. But every house in Corona Del Mar has pluses and minuses, and you pay for them. If you buy a house 2 doors from Pacific Coast Highway, you're going to have a lot of noise. If you buy a house by a 100-year-old restaurant, you're going to have some noise. Talking about El Cholo, when it was owned by the previous owner, they had amplified music, and I was out on that patio, so I'm not so sure about talking about the history about that being accurate. And a bigger thing, my neighbor across the streets lived there for 60 years and brought to the attention that the parking study that's being cited from 1977 was done when you couldn't park on both sides of the flower streets. So the parking has been doubled since that was done. And I think it accommodates businesses like this, and it shouldn't be used as some kind of a hammer to attack somebody that they're going out of their way to make this a better place. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Any other speakers? Heart and soul of Newport Beach. Take offense to that on the west side on the beach, but that's okay.
My name's Chad Tilner. I live at 324 Hazel Drive. I grew up there. I'm just slightly beyond line of sight with 5 Crowns. Now, growing up there, the amplified music isn't something I remember from my childhood. That's something that seems to me like it's been in the last number of years. There are times where I'm by an open window, late on a weekend, and I go, that's kind of annoying. And then I go, well, it sounds like they're having fun. What the heck? It doesn't bother me all that much. There are other places in the house I can go. But I'm right at the borderline. There are a dozen houses closer than me that, since there's the inverse square law with regards to sound, are going to have significantly more noise. If they have a problem with it, I'm game to support the legitimacy. If they don't have a problem, fair enough, I'm okay. But it is a thing. Almost all the noise I'm hearing personally has to be reflection because I'm just beyond line of sight. So any sound that's getting to me has probably reflected off more than one surface. So the sound wall isn't a wildly superfluous notion. And the sound issue matters. I'm not opposed, but please don't pretend that the sound is irrelevant. have great fondness for Five Crowns. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, I do want to go back to council before we have the applicant and the appellant come back for the rebuttals. Just to follow up with council, was there anything or any information that was conveyed in ex parte communication that was different from what you heard this evening or on the record? Nothing? Okay, great. Seeing none. Does the applicant have any closing comments? No? Okay. Does the appellant have any closing comments? Okay.
I at one time enjoyed dining at Five Crowns until I had this interplay with them. I also lived across the street from Ryan and watched his young daughters grow up and play in the garden in front and rather enjoyed their company. But I'm offended by the constant attacks by some folks on people who complain rightfully about 70 decibel noise up in their bedrooms and up in your alleyways and up on your patios. And you would too, if you lived there. And it's not right for anybody to come here and say, well, to hell with them, essentially. I like walking down the street in my flip-flops and breezing into the side door to have dinner. Nice, that's nice, do that. But don't ignore the sound impact on the residences. You have no right to ignore that. Our expert says that no matter what they do in mitigation, it will not, in his opinion, mitigate the sound. Read his report. It will not mitigate it. So if it won't mitigate it, why didn't they come to us? Why all of the contacting you guys and contacting the folks who don't live there? They didn't try to resolve this issue by saying, how do we mitigate? Not at all. No interest in it, because they're going to get a bunch of folks who'll say, hey, let's wrap ourselves in a flag and say we should do this. I've owned that property for 29 years. I've built 2 custom homes there. I am offended by this request, this bulldozing someone who says it's too loud and you cannot protect the residents. You can protect both parties, just apply some limitations. The limitations should be considered, but he should go back, stop for 30 days, and there should be, I like the idea, an independent expert to evaluate which of the expert opinions is correct. And is there really an effective mitigation proposed? Not to experiment by victimizing the people who live close by. And you can't complain anymore because no one does anything about it because they support Five Crowns. Please, change what the Planning Commission did and the zoning director and reject the application or send it back for further study and analysis. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Additional comments here by council. We'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Grant and then Councilmember Weigand. Do you still have your comments? Okay, I'll go to you next.
Just a couple of clarifications maybe from staff. I'm wondering, can you elaborate or reconcile this question of the difference in the studies, the one from the applicant and the appellant? Have you identified where that disconnect is?
Yes, so initially when the zoning administrator first reviewed the item, they relied on one study, and the appellant had provided additional information kind of rebutting the initial study. So the zoning administrator requested some additional work to be prepared for that study. Ultimately, what's in your packet is the most up-to-date study that the applicant's acoustical engineer prepared. Ultimately, we have 2 competing technical experts in this case. Ultimately, the operator is going to be responsible for complying with our municipal code at the end of the day. And so the intent of this limited term permit is to provide them the opportunity to implement the design features. If there's continued violations, then we'll continue to work with the applicant to come into compliance.
Okay, so I understand that process. And I'm just curious, do we have any sort of like precedent in the city for having on-site monitoring? Like, I know we've dealt with this like in maybe like airport noise and things like that where we have like regular monitoring. Do we do anything like that for businesses in our city? Is that?
Not regular monitoring. I know the Newport Dunes, when they have special events, they're required to conduct monitoring of their private events, make sure noise doesn't carry over across the bay. But in this case, we would have that special condition requiring that the operator monitor the noise, and then if code enforcement is called, they'll typically work with the operator and to lower the noise levels.
Okay, so the operator will do the monitoring, and if there are issues that arise in the community, they'll have those monitoring results available for the city to take a look at, so that we can effectively understand if we're exceeding or not exceeding the levels. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
That's the process.
Design feature 7 in the noise study, which is conditioned, requires that.
Okay. Thank you.
Before we go on, City Attorney Aaron Harp, do you want to? There's some mention of the applicant requirement for this 30 days. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just briefly. The appellant raised an issue of whether or not the application requirement that to be submitted, whether or not they could even submit, because he claims that there's a 30-day window where there can't be operation. And having written vast majorities of the code, the intent of that section is to make sure that an applicant can come in and get basically process their application and had it heard by the zoning administrator in time before they actually want to start the use, so that they're not either subject to citation or can't go forward the use. The intent of that section is not to bar people or remove jurisdiction from hearing the item by the zoning administrator. So I thought it'd be nice to clean up that piece for the record.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Weigand.
Yeah, I had a question on one of the slides from the applicant, but I think I remember what it had said. It gave a date of 10/31, either 23 or 24. For us, for staff, it's fine. 10/31, 34, 20, either in 2023 or 2024. It was who asked who to do this limited term permit to go to the ZA in the first place? Was this the applicant coming to staff saying, I want to do something, and you said, hey, you got a lot of this legal non-conforming stuff, we want to clean this up? Or was this coming from staff saying, we've received some complaints from the public, we want you to address what you've got here as a outdoor patio? What was kind of the nexus of getting that to come to where we are in the first place?
Yes, so what really initiated this was we received a noise complaint, and in reviewing the history and the entitlements for the restaurant, that's when we discovered that the old use permit technically didn't allow them to utilize the entire outdoor garden area. It really restricted them for dining and use of just that smaller outdoor patio. And so once we discovered that, we worked with the operator and requested that they amend their permanent use permit to just basically clean up their entitlements and go through the proper formal approval to utilize the garden area. However, at that same time, we were dealing with a lot of restaurants and transitioning from those COVID patios over to permanent patios. And so one of those methods was allowing for the restaurant operators to apply for a limited term permit on an interim basis while they continued to amend their permanent use permit. And so in this case, it was determined that a limited term permit would be appropriate for this trial period, and then they would come back and amend their use permit for the long-term duration.
So the limited term permit is just kind of to get us through to see if this is working out.
Correct.
And then what is your estimate time to come back again? What, to zoning administrator at that point if we approve that, or if something?
So the limited term permit will be, it's good for 1 year with the allowance for 1 additional year extension. The process to amend the use permit will be to go to the planning commission. And so once the applicant files their application, we would go through that review process, and it may take 3 to 5 months.
So seeing this as a de novo hearing means it's a complete reset. So what we choose to do tonight, could we say, you know what, we want it to just be a permanent permit? Could we do that, or is this, are we restricted to that because of the posting of the a posting requirement as far as?
Correct. Yeah.
What
So
we
the application that was filed was for a limited term permit. we've never noticed an application to amend the actual use permit. So we would have to, they would essentially have to reapply and then go through the approval process.
So being a de novo hearing, though, we can modify any of these conditions that are before us if we wanted to make them stronger, make them weaker, make them just approve them. So that's what we're doing. It's a complete reset, meaning everything of the past is done. It doesn't count. Everything that we proved tonight is set forth moving forward, either being old existing laws or things on the books or previous meetings in zoning administrator or PC. Both of those were completely resetting everything, correct?
Correct. As it relates to the limited term permit and the coastal development permit before you today, it's de novo, so the council has the discretion to kind of go through and apply whatever conditions you feel it's appropriate or inappropriate.
How many complaints did you get on this?
Okay. Melinda's going to pull it up right now.
And while you're thinking, Jaime, maybe you can help me on this other question on process. How long has this process been going on between when you asked, we had a ZA meeting, that decision was appealed, and then we had a planning commission meeting. What was the date that we started? Was it 23 or 24?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the initial conversation we had with the operator was back in September of 2023. The zoning administrator decision occurred in July of 2024.
Wow. Okay.
And Melinda has an update on the number of complaints received.
There are 9 complaints received.
9 unique from
Were they
there?
unique individual complaints, or were they from one person?
No, we don't have that information. However, I don't have that information.
How about PD response? Was it code enforcement request, or did it elevate to?
In 2023, there were 5 calls for loud music, and in 2024, and 2025, there were no calls for loud music.
24 and 25, there has been no calls for loud music.
Correct.
To the police department.
Police, or code enforcement for that matter? Or would that be a separate matter?
That would be separate, and code enforcement, there was 5.
5 in 2024.
Correct.
And if we were to approve any of this tonight, could this will just be calls, if there are complaints, would just be registered and logged, and then when we go back to this from the limited to the full, we'll just have an analysis on how that will come out?
Yeah, if we receive calls, we'll continue to log them. Code enforcement will go out to verify if there is an issue, and then they'll try to help mediate. If it is, loud, they'll help bring the music down. But this is kind of part of the effort today, is through this limited term permit, is to see how the program works with the new design features that the applicant's proposing. And then ideally, when we come back for the full amendment to the use permit, we'll be able to report back on the success of the improvements.
So basically, anything we approved tonight, if we were to move forward, would basically have that 1 or 2 year analysis to give us about it. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's what I have for now. I'm thinking a couple things through. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Councilmember Blum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm start with, I was pretty surprised to see this come in front of us. Not just because of what the 5 Crowns is to this community, how long they've been there. And I think one of the slides literally showing that it was built before any homes around it were ever constructed. I was a little surprised to see that someone would buy a home behind it and expect for something to be quiet. You actually buy it because of the amenity, because you have access to something as great as that is. You're buying in Corona Del Mar right off of PCH, behind another development, behind an active restaurant that has been really a cornerstone of who we are. And now we're having issues with what that place is. You're bringing up, I have a list of items here with issues you have. Well, it's funny because you brought up that this is the first time they've done events like this. I can tell you that is categorically incorrect. I've been at events. In fact, my father was married there 20-something years ago with a live band on that patio. My parents had a photography studio across the street since 1979. And it's been a staple of who we've been. So I'm just having a really hard time understanding why this has become an issue now, why sound mitigation is what you're asking for. When you said you bought this, so I guess in 1994 was when you first purchased this property, right? And then it looks like the remodel was somewhere in 2014. So your understanding of the worth of what that piece of real estate is. I'm not, no, actually, I'm just, if you want to be rude to me right now, we can go ahead and do that.
Well, this is not time for public comments. This is a council. The public hearing's closed.
This is a great way to proceed. Perfect. You were fully aware of what you purchased when you purchased it.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right.
Sir, you can't interrupt the council. They're deliberating on this. You've had your opportunity to comment.
When there's no record of support for it.
You've had your opportunity to comment, and now it's time for the council to deliberate. We would hate to have you removed from the room.
I'm going to continue. I think what's important and what I swore to protect in this city, wonderful. It's actually make it easier for me. What I swore to protect in this city is who we are as a people, the people who have come forth to make this community great, the institutions that have created who we are. And so as I look out there and I thank the people who have built small businesses, restaurants that require so much work, attenuation, and energy to get these things done. And so when I sit here and I see somebody that is angry about what they decided to move into, it is unbelievable to me. We built this community because of people like this. When you look at those historical documents and you realize that this started the neighborhood, not the other way around. When this restaurant was here before any house ever existed within blocks of it, you ask yourself the question, what created what? Newport's not here because a bunch of residents decided to live here. It's here because we built the pavilion, we built islands, we built restaurants that have existed. And we moved in because those were attributes and amenities to who we are and what we are. And so when somebody has an issue about what we've done for literally 60, 70 years, and now they want to form a complaint, I have a hard time looking at it seriously. I have a hard time understanding how, when someone has helped define who we are as a community, when someone has formed more memories than anyone, when I can remember Christmases and Thanksgivings, birthdays and weddings at a place that has been there forever, and someone moves in and decides they don't like it anymore, that then as a judicial body, we have to sit here and say, no, they're wrong, you're right. That's not the reality. The reality is that we're defined by what we decide to do for the things that define us. And I sit up here now and I'm willing to put the full force of who I am personally behind that because I believe it's true. I believe that our congregation spaces are who we are. We have more memories that we can attribute to meals we've had and celebrations we've enjoyed than how many quiet evenings at home. And you're right, We all deserve that quiet evening at home. No one's asking to party until the wee hours. We're talking about 10 o'clock. I get it. Shut a window, go to bed. I understand. Sometimes it is unnerving, it is difficult, but the reality is we have the beauty of a choice in this town to choose where we live. And if it affected property values, anything that had to do with that piece, I would say, great, let's look at it. It doesn't at all. That value has not gone down. This is not affecting who he is and how much money he has for that property. People actually might pay more to live there because of its proximity to something so great. So at the end, I don't like things like this. I actually think this is the opposite of who we are as a community. This is the opposite of who we are as people. We are here to support and embrace the idea of what we are as a community. And that's where we get to celebrate. And the Five Crowns has been a pinnacle of celebration in this community for so long. In fact, it's defined what Corona Del Mar is. So I do not care for this type of, see, my wife would be so proud that I didn't swear right there. Very, very swear. This is something that I believe wholeheartedly we need to back. We need to be behind, because otherwise, what's the next? And the next, and the next. That somebody is upset because they move in and they don't like something behind them. They don't like the next thing. We have to hold ground. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bartow.
Well, I hate to follow that with my very simple questions. For the noise complaints that have come in, it said 2023 and in 2024. It looks like a lot of this, at least with the permitting, goes back to 2020. Do we have a long history of noise complaints going back all those years? And is it inconsistent with kind of other restaurants? It just doesn't.
No, so we don't have a long history of noise complaints. I think they just recently started appearing, like in the 2020 was the first one, and then they progressively got, we received more.
Just real quick, can I jump in here? I know we don't normally disclose who the complainant is, but are they all from the same complaining party, pretty much?
I don't have it in front of me. But a number of them are from the appellant.
Okay. And I'm just curious, is it inconsistent with other places? I mean, I live next to a resort, so talk about noise complaints. I understand that. But is it inconsistent with other restaurants of that nature?
So in speaking with the police department on the calls for service is not out of the ordinary with other restaurants in the city.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Weigand.
Yeah, I had some time to look over some of these conditions. And, you know, I know I am, and I'm pretty sure most of my colleagues are pretty pro-business in this city. So I see a lot of these conditions as a bit red tape and not red carpet. And for a business who's been here since 1965, the original plans outline the outside patio, and what we're doing here today is resetting and giving an opportunity, I think, more towards the business here to operate in its core function. And so I think a few of these conditions are a bit egregious and a little excessive, in my opinion. Number 3 basically says they have no right to an outdoor area. And they've been using that patio for decades, so I want to get rid of that. I don't think it's necessary. Number 6, this is a $500,000 improvement to the business here to do a sound attenuation wall. If we're coming back in a couple of years, let's see where we're at in that period of time. But for him to spend $500,000 on an improvement, business is hurting right now, and I don't think it's necessary. So I'd like to strike 6. 8, I think it should be modified. I think 10 o'clock is a reasonable time on Monday through Thursday, and 11 o'clock on Friday through Sunday. So I'd modify 8. 9 can be deleted because it mentions the sound wall, which I think is unnecessary, so delete 9. 10, again, I think 4 private events with an attendance greater than 75 persons per month. I mean, some months have 5 weekends, so, you're essentially limiting a business to something that's too restrictive, more red tape, unnecessary. So I would remove 10. 11, loading and unloading of restaurant to occur only on Poppy. I think Poppy's too narrow as it is, so giving Hazel access should be allowed. So I would modify 11 to Hazel and Poppy, or just strike it. 16, sale of to-go alcohol is prohibited in outdoor patios, but you can do it in the inside. So I just think it's an unnecessary item that just needs to be removed. 19, community development director as designee may inspect modified area at any time. I think code enforcement can handle that, and it's just an unnecessary request. And then, as Mr. Mosier had said, 20 and 2 were the same, so you could delete 20 as well. So that would be my, if we were making a motion, that would be my motion, but I'm not sure if we're there yet. But I think a business such as 5 Crowns as an institution, the photo showed it was the only place in Corona Del Mar. And as Councilmember Blom said, PCH is probably louder than the noise that's being generated from these events. So I think it's burdensome on a business who is a namesake. And I think we should take care of those that are longtime businesses and folks who really do show what Newport Beach is all about. So that would be my motion if it is appropriate, but I'm happy to continue the conversation with council.
Okay. City Attorney, do you want to talk about item 3 and potentially due process now that the applicant's left the room?
Yeah, so just 2 issues to address real quickly. This needs to stay as a limited term duration permit, and with a 1-year term and then renewable for another year. The other conditions, are subject to the council's prerogative of whether you want to remove them or not. And I would note that if the appellant was here, we'd ask him for his comments on the removal of those conditions, but he's not here, and therefore he doesn't have an opportunity to comment on it.
Okay, so item 3 has to stay in.
It needs to stay in, so it's still a limited duration permit of 2 years.
Is there modifications? I mean, because there's discussion here of block wall. I just want to make sure that the language is appropriate.
Yeah, you can get rid of everything except for if you kept the first sentence up to, from the applicant down to an extension of time is not guaranteed. So I guess that's a little bit over 1 sentence. That'd be fine. You could get rid of the second part there regarding the sound wall. Keep the last sentence about amendment to use permit number 1822 through the end of that sentence. So you're basically taking out the middle sentence about the applicant shall be required to cease all permit operations and removing temporary improvements not including the sound wall made to the outdoor space as part of this approval on or before the end of the effective period. You get rid of that.
Okay.
No, the public meeting's closed. The public hearing's closed. Councilmember Klein, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so here we go with the feedback again. Well, I was going to say that I could have made an argument in defense of the appellant's position, but clearly the applicant has, thank you. Clearly the applicant has spent 2 years and jumped through a lot of hoops to try to appease him and address his concerns. And I think he was pretty clear in his comments that there's nothing that could be done that would satisfy him. So I am in agreement with Councilmember Wigan's request and some of those amendments, particularly to remove the requirement for the sound mitigation wall.
Okay. Do we have any other council comments? Seeing none, we've got a first, and you want a second? Okay. Councilman Blom will second. And the motion is to uphold the Planning Commission decision with the amendments of removing some of the language from number 3.
It's a de novo hearing, so it's probably just what's on
Yeah, so you're open, you can, as long as we keep this as a limited term duration permit, as I referred to regarding condition number 3, then you can make changes to the other conditions of approval that you think are appropriate. So I think you were more than just condition number 3 is what we were proposing. Maybe
No,
you could-
correct, yeah.
Yeah,
6,
I'll make
8,
that
9.
modification.
Yeah.
It was whatever we modified on 3, delete 6, amend 8, delete 9, delete 10, delete 11, delete 16, delete 19, and 20.
You good with that?
And I'll keep that.
Okay.
Second. Thank you.
Discussion? All right, let's vote.
The motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 23 is an ordinance number 2025-7 and 2025-8 and resolution number 2025-19 approving amendment to the North Newport Center planned community. We'll go ahead and start with the staff report.
We wait for Councilmember Weber.
Yeah, for sure. Probably best. I'm sure Leilani went to get her. Yeah. All right. Ms. Leon, do you have a staff report for us?
I will turn it over to Assistant City Manager Simone Georges.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mayor Stapleton and City Council members. Simone Georges, Assistant City Manager, and with me is Liz Westmoreland, Principal Planner. So just recall for the City Council's benefit that we have completed the implementation of the housing element and the land use element and the zoning overlay in compliance with state law. So state law has mandated all these housing units, and we have completed that exercise. So now what we're seeing in the City Hall and in the department is applicants, property owners are saying we're going to go ahead and take advantage of these housing overlays. And so this is one of those applications that's come to the city. It's a little bit different, a little complicated because they already have a planned community, which is kind of their own zoning. They already have an existing development agreement. So all these documents need to be amended, and that's what you have in front of you. You don't have actually an actual project. You're actually looking at this to make amendments to those legislative documents to allow a project to come forward. So that's just the background of what we're doing here this evening. Liz has a 10-slide presentation to kind of go through all those changes. There's a lot of paper here, a lot of little nuances, but hopefully we can summarize it for you in this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Lyman, City Council members. Liz Westmoreland with the Planning Division. This project is the North Newport Center Planned Community Amendments. So first, to orient you to Newport Center, in the center is Fashion Island, surrounded by the Ring Road or Newport Center Drive, and then there's a series of blocks that wrap around. This is the North Newport Planned Community as it stands today. So all the areas in yellow are in the planned community, and they're owned or under the control of Irvine Company. So this is a unique planned community in that it includes all the necessary ingredients of a planned community, such as housing, jobs, and shopping. Provide a little bit of background, as Simone mentioned. In 2022, the state certified the city's housing element, which allocated housing throughout various focus areas of the city, and one of those areas was Newport Center. And then back in September of 2024, the City Council adopted the rezoning through the Housing Opportunity Overlay District. So this was the way that we actually implemented the zoning opportunities. So if you look at the map on the right here, all these purple areas are identified within the housing overlay. And this is the Newport Center snapshot. And so what that means is that developers can come in today and they can build housing in any of these areas without amending the underlying zoning or general plan designation, simply through a site development review with the Planning Commission, subject to a couple criteria. And one of those is the density limit, so 20 to 50 dwelling units an acre, and then there's a cap for Newport Center, and that's 2,439 dwelling units. So that brings us to the request today. So Irvine Company, the applicant, is seeking to allocate 1,500 of those 2,400 or so units from the overlay, the standard zoning, to their planned community, PC 56, for future construction of housing on only those purple areas, those housing opportunity sites. And so what this means is that all these future housing projects would be subject to the planned community standards, height, setbacks, floor area, all of those things, instead of the more generic zoning code requirements. So they've as proposed, amended the planned community to allow for residential in all these housing opportunity site areas, including Block 100, 400, and Fashion Island. And so what this does is it allows them, since the planned community is about 170 acres, allows them to plan more comprehensively and consider things like view corridors, open space, et cetera. And again, no construction is actually proposed at this time. There's some other changes to the planned community, and a couple of these I'll dive into a little bit more. First is increasing height limits for residential, and then some procedural or streamlining changes. They're also seeking to add 2 additional sites to the planned community that are not currently included, and that's 100 and 190 Newport Center Drive. Also looking to change some parking requirements, sign standards, open space requirements, and then incorporate some objective design standards into the planned community. So going into height limits a little bit more, there's a few changes here to allow for residential. So Fashion Island does not currently allow residential, so they're establishing a height limit of 225 feet, where other buildings are currently allowed to go up to 125. And then on the bottom of the screen, Block 100 currently allows development up to 50 feet, and this would allow 125. And then up at 800 San Clemente, which is within San Joaquin Plaza, would allow for a maximum height of 85 feet, where 65 is currently allowed. So a couple important things to note about the streamlining, because these are unique to the planned community. So first is something that's not changing. This is currently in the planned community. And that is a streamlining provision that allows future projects, and this would now include the future housing projects, to be reviewed at the director level. And then that decision would be appealable to the Planning Commission. What's changing and what's being proposed here today is that this same streamlining provision would apply to traffic studies. It's not all traffic studies, but the more simple ones. So the ones where we're able to make the findings that there's no impact to intersections, or that there's no impact with the implementation of some improvements. So again, this would be appealable to the Planning Commission. Next, going into the development agreement. So in exchange for the 1,500 dwelling unit allocation to the planned community, the applicant would provide a series of public benefits through the development agreement. So first, they would extend the term by 10 years from the current development agreement to 2042. There would be a general public benefit fee of $17,000 a unit for any units that are built after 2032. A park fee would be applied for a for-rent product at $34,000 a unit for 700 of the dwelling units that we built later. There's also a unique requirement for off-site improvements. So Urban Company would be required to develop a full landscape and streetscape master plan for Newport Center, and they would be required to actually build those improvements, which is estimated at a value of about $17 million or more. They're also offering to provide payment of voluntary development impact fees, and so those are for those 5 categories: police, fire, water, sewer, and recreation. And that's about $9 a square foot currently. This provides a total value of roughly $60 million. Additionally, another important component of the development agreement is for the provision of affordable housing, and this is through the Affordable Housing Implementation Plan that's before you tonight. And so this requires the applicant to plan for a 105-unit minimum affordable project for households that are very low or low income, and this would be somewhere in the city. And what's required is that a building permit would need to be issued by January 31st, 2029. If that deadline cannot be met, the second option would be to provide land dedication for the city to allow for that same density of development, same number of development. And then if that's still not feasible, then in lieu fees would be paid per market rate unit that is constructed. So for every unit they build within Newport Center that's market rate, they'd be required to pay a fee of about $36,000 a unit. If the affordable housing is built, then this would be at a value of about $600,000 per affordable unit. I also have a couple minor changes that were requested by the applicant. So first, for the actual AHIP itself, under the number and type of affordable units, there is a provision that allows for, if the Urban Company provides an excess of the affordable units beyond what they're required, that they can use that in the future to offset other requirements. And so the change here is just to also clarify that if additional land is dedicated to accommodate more units, they would get the same benefit there. Additionally, in the resolution, there was one minor change to make a clarification that the applicant is obligated to pull a building permit for the affordable units, but there's not a timeline to finish construction of that permit. So that's what that change is on the right-hand side. A couple other items. So water supply assessment is required in this case because the project includes more than 500 dwelling units. So the utilities department reviewed the report that was prepared by the applicant, and it concluded that there were adequate water supplies. Additionally, in terms of CEQA, the city already completed the program environmental impact report for the housing overlays, and that already evaluated the impacts from these new housing opportunities. And so the applicant provided a consistency analysis to the city, and then we utilized our consultant to peer review that study. With that in mind, back in March, the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council of this item, and then earlier this month, the Airport Land Use Commission found this project to be consistent with the Airport Environs Land Use Plan. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council conduct a public hearing, find the project consistent with CEQA, approve the resolution, and introduce the ordinances and pass them on to a second reading. The applicant is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Councilmember Weigand.
Yeah, just wanted to, if you could pull back that maybe first or second slide that showed the map, that one. So Civic Center Drive, where Block 100 is south of, that's where the site plan ordinance is, right? So the residential community across the way, there's a site plan ordinance, so you can't develop over a certain height. So that Block 100 is just north of that, correct? So that's not impactful to that rule that exists, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments by council, questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and now open the public hearing. Now is time for public comments on this item.
Good evening, Mayor Stapleton, members of the council. I am Shauna Schaffner, and I represent Irvine Company on this application. We have reviewed the staff report. We are in full agreement with the staff recommendation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening again, Adam Leverins. At some point, something has to be done about affordable housing and the units. I mean, this, you know, what I see is an elimination of affordable units and then not replacing them. For instance, you know, where Marina Park is cited, there were over 50 manufactured mobile homes that are now gone. Last year, the city bought a triplex on the peninsula, built in the 1920s, to bulldoze and make a parking lot. And then July 9th of last year, an ordinance which is in abeyance to eliminate the 50 or so liveaboard permits in the harbor. I mean, there needs to be places for people to serve cocktails and hamburgers and wash boats and cars. And just the low numbers of quote-unquote affordable units among the total of a number of various plans I've seen here. I mean, it's clear the housing mandates are never going to be met, but there has to be some way. I don't see how luxury apartments, and I know, you know, they don't want to be associated with one another, but there has to be some way to start trying to address this, or this community is just going to become so exclusive that nobody who you need to work here and support these small businesses is going to be able to live here. And that leads to parking problems and traffic problems and air quality problems and all kinds of other things. I don't know a solution, but something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Stapleton, members of the council, my name, as you're probably catching on, is Jim Mosier. First of all, when I came in the lobby, I found two additional items. One has a memo on it. It says it was dated last night. Seems to be related to this item. And then without any reference to what it is another thing called amended, which seems to duplicate this one, but maybe is different from it. I don't know. I hope somebody will clarify what it is that you're actually seeking to approve tonight. The second comment is I think it's important to note that the 1,500 units that the Irvine Company is asking to have reserved for itself were added to the general plan without a green light vote on the pretense that the state requires us to add those units. However, as I think you understand, what the state is requiring is not, as Mr. Lawrence was referring to, 1,500 luxury units. It is asking for us for affordable units. And the Irvine Company is apparently saying it cannot build affordable units in Newport Center because the land value is too high. So it's proposing to build some in an undefined other area somewhere else. I think it's important to remind you that the Planning Division actually has before it 2 current applications for Newport Center. One at 1407 Jamboree, which is across the street from the police headquarters. The other at 12 Corporate Plaza, which is just down Civic Center Drive from here. And in fact, for unknown reasons, you had a closed session about that property. Both of those are proposing 30% affordable housing. So it appears that it is feasible. 30% is in the planning speak that qualifies them for bonus units, so they'll actually only be 15% affordable. However, that appears to be, if you set aside the money amounts, that is a better deal than the Irvine Company is offering with under 10%, it appears. Second comment I would make is that the height increases may not affect the immediate homes up here. They are going to affect some of the homes further up. And a previous council spent considerable money building a view platform on the very expensive bridge across San Miguel. It certainly will affect views from there. And then finally, I'm very concerned about a proposal, it seems to be a footnote on page, to a table on page 48 that says that the maximum allowed density will not be considered on a project-by-project basis, but an aggregate over all these opportunity sites, which would allow all the 1,500, in theory, to be built on a single parcel, which would be far, far over the 50 dwelling units per acre. I think that's inconsistent with our land use element that says that the density is to be reviewed on a project-by-project basis, not on a whole planned community and aggregating all of the lots within it. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's public speakers on this item? Please come ahead. Is anyone else planning on speaking? If you are, feel free to stand at the other mic if you'd like, and we'll form a line. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council people. My name is Todd Larner. I'm a resident of Newport Beach for over 54 years. Live at 1945 Terracita Lane. I have had the privilege of being a urban planner and architect for over 30 years, working for a lot of the competitors of the Irvine Company, Rancho Mission Viejo, Five Point Communities, Playa Vista, New Holland and Farming, Disney, Universal. I've also had the privilege to teach at USC, and we talk about smart planning, smart growth principles, teaching at the graduate school there. And I want to go on the record in front of everybody here. I've never had the Irvine Company as a client of mine, probably because I worked for their competitors, and that's why I never got hired. So with that being said, I want to back up about traffic. You know, a lot of people come up here and talk about how traffic is going to crush everything, it's going to be bad. When you look at planning principles of where this has come from the 1960s when Ray Watson and Pereira designed this, it was an evolutionary plan. It started off as a circle, it started off as horizontal, it was wedged between 2 large arterial collectors that bring over 12 million people to Newport Beach. Just on rough orders of magnitude, Knott's Berry Farm is about 7 to 8 million visitors. Disney's 24 to 28 million visitors a year. So we have these smart growth principles with PCH 55, all these coming in here. And to say that this is going to impact traffic is ridiculous. 1,500 units on the mega scale that we're talking about here is, when we look at the city as an aggregate, is really not that much. When you talk about the uses that it's going to be replacing on some of the lower blocks, we talk about how 20 to 50 units an acre, that's 2 to 3 story townhomes. Then you talk about going up to a maximum about 3, maybe 4 stories over podium that would go below grade or at grade. So it's already what's existing in this area. And so when you talk about trips per property, You look at the AASHTO standards, which is the American Highway Safety Transportation, you have an office use that's there right now that has more trips per day, per occupant, than what a regular single-family detached home has here in Newport Beach, and then all the way up to about 60 units an acre. That's what we talk about when we go through smart growth and smart planning principles. I want to say that this plan is a smart plan because it does tick all the boxes in going through. I do acknowledge that we do have a major housing problem here in the United States. It's not just California, it's not just Newport Beach, it's in the United States. We lose over 1 million units a year through attrition. We aren't going to be able to solve it here, but this is a step in the right direction. The other thing that we talk about is synergy of uses in certain places where we have jobs, housing balance. The dynamic of what is going on in America right now with employers trying to find quality housing for their employees is diminishing. That's why you have these places going to the old corporate towns from back in the 1920s and 30s. They're kind of reinventing themselves with high tech, especially in Northern California, Sacramento, Silicon Valley, where you have housing close to jobs. They don't want to have people driving over 2.5 hours to get to work. So this also plays into making Newport a great destination for employment. So with all that being said, I just want to wrap up. I think this is a very good plan for the city of Newport Beach. I think it brings in great quality housing, and I support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor Stapleton and Newport Beach City Council. My name is Georgina Jacobson, and I was raised in Corona Del Mar, and I currently live in the community of Big Canyon. I've been a realtor in the luxury market, specializing in Newport Beach for more than 30 years. My specific area of expertise is Big Canyon, Irvine Terrace, Harbor Island, and Corona Del Mar. I love selling the dream of my beautiful hometown of Newport Beach. It is very important for me to see our community continue to thrive. We must all keep an eye on any future proposed development to assure that we maintain the quality of life that we expect from our town. Addressing the housing mandate imposed on our city by the state of California must be handled in a thoughtful and creative manner. That is why I support the proposed housing market by the Irvine Company in the Newport Center area. The Irvine Company is a proven quality developer in Newport Center, and that is its home. They have proven for decades that they will build the most impressive homes, apartments, retail, office space, and resorts in their communities. Those of us who call Newport Beach home know to expect excellence from the Irvine Company. Selling the beauty, fun, and prestige of Newport Beach is my job. With the planned future development in Newport Center, the future of Newport Beach looks bright. Thank you for your service, and I hope that you will please approve the development agreement proposed to you tonight.
Terrific, thank you. Next speaker. Okay, seeing none. All right, great. I'll go ahead and, now there's no more public comments. I'll go ahead and close our public hearing. Any additional council comments or questions up here? Mr. Bond.
I should make a quick comment. I was privileged to be born and raised here and spend a lot of time. And the Irvine Company, when I grew up, was an evil enterprise, mainly because I didn't understand what they were. And then I went and moved to other places and was like, oh my God, they are not. This might be one of the greatest things that's ever happened. And the one piece I always like to bring up, if you ever walk around Fashion Island, look at the trash cans. It's a company called Neri out of Italy, doing cast iron trash cans that are more expensive than most things that most of us will ever buy. And the idea is because they're part of the community. They live here. They care about us. And they want this to be everything that it is. So sometimes you look at what defines and what creates a community. And, I had no allegiance or love to it prior. And even still, I'm not necessarily always on board with everything being coastal Mediterranean and beige. But there is definitely a point where you can look at the investment. And a lot of what we think about when we think about community is who's willing to invest in that community. Who's willing to put the money where their mouth is? And that's a huge question we all have to ask ourselves on a regular basis, because it's easy to complain. It's a lot harder to throw dollars behind that. It's a lot harder to invest in something hoping that it has the traction and the love that moves us all forward. And so in working with this project, and especially working with them and seeing the idea, I mean, I got to tell you, there's not a developer that's ever walked forward with us and offered an affordable option, saying that they'll do some retirement housing for us in a separate location. And I get it, it's not disclosed right now. They're working on their own projects, and I think that's reasonable. They're also looking at creating exactly what everyone is talking about. You know, Adam, you came up here and talked about not having affordable housing. Well, I mean, apartments are affordable, Adam. I don't care that they're more expensive. It's actually the cost and how you make money. Otherwise, it's bankruptcy, and then there's no affordable housing. So we're at a point right now where I'm very proud of what staff has accomplished with this. I mean, I thought Liz gave one of the best presentations we've seen up here in a long time. So thank you. We hit a lot of points. We got a lot done. This is something that we've been trying to do. We're trying to create who we are. And, you know, oftentimes when we sit up here as council members, they ask us, you know, what's in it for us? Well, nothing is the answer. We live here. We're residents here. We have businesses here. We love it here. There's nothing in it for us. What's in it for us is that we want to see Newport as we recall it and remember it, but moving forward and in the right way. And a lot of times that's really difficult, and you see every other city failing. That's where we're succeeding. And so my full support is behind this. I spent time on it, and I have all the love and happiness to get this approved. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Grant.
Just quickly wanted to agree quite a bit with what Councilmember Blum is saying. We have been working together along with Mayor Stapleton in a small committee ad hoc and working with staff in trying to navigate very difficult principles in implementing our housing element. And I can say that staff has worked tirelessly and has made great strides in achieving milestones that we can then report back at the state level to meet the criteria that we've been forced to meet. So I do want to thank staff and say that, you know, we continue the work. We are working towards these milestones in affordable and making sure that the placement of the housing is consistent with the unique nature of our community. And I'm pleased to be able to make progress in that. So thank you, staff.
Okay, any other comments by council? Okay, Sina, do you want to make a motion?
I'd love to make the motion with staff recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, second by Councilmember Grant. All right, let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance titles for Ordinance 2025-7, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving an amendment to the North Newport Center Plan Community Development Plan PC 56 to allocate 1,500 base dwelling units from the HO4 Newport Center area sub-area development limits set forth in Section 20.28.50 Housing Opportunity Overlay Zoning Districts of the Newport Beach Municipal Code to the North Newport Center Planned Community Development Plan for 100 and 190 Newport Center Drive and various addresses within the North Newport Center Planned Community, and Ordinance 2025-8 approving a development agreement for the project located at 100 and 190 Newport Center Drive and various addresses within the North Newport Center Planned Community. The motion carries unanimously 7-0.
Terrific, thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the announcement for motion for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Okay, before we do that, City Attorney, you want to clarify modifying the resolution and findings for 5 Crowns?
Yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to confirm with the council, I don't think there needs to be a motion for reconsideration. I just wanted to confirm that I took the changes to the conditions of approval and the adoption of the resolution to also authorize us to change the findings of fact in the resolution to conform so that they match up. Because there's some of the findings of fact that are based on the conditions that are no longer there, so we're just going to match those up. But I wanted to raise it to give you an opportunity to reconsider if you thought that wasn't what the motion was. But that's how I took it.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, terrific. Any motions for reconsideration? Okay, great. Seeing none. Before we go into closed session, we're going to do the adjournment in memory. Why don't you begin with what happened today, and then I'll go into final adjournment.
Yes, just briefly, I want to take an opportunity tonight to recognize the passing of an esteemed Newport Beach resident, Elizabeth Starr. Elizabeth was a great patron of our community and many causes in our city, in particular our libraries, which are well-loved, well-used. And she will forever be remembered, in great distinction. We will probably have a more extensive acknowledgement of Elizabeth's passing at a future meeting, but since she did pass today, I thought it was relevant that we acknowledge that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I want to adjourn in the memory of Andrea Donahue. We've got some photos here as well. Andrea grew up in Kansas and met Coach Terry Donahue when he was an assistant coach at Kansas, and she was a co-ed. They soon got married, and they moved to Los Angeles to coach at UCLA. Andrea would go on the recruiting trips with Terry, and the players would later say that she was truly the secret weapon for them choosing UCLA football, and they absolutely loved her. She took the players in as her own, and the Donahues did have their own, 3 daughters that are married and live here in Newport Beach, raising their kids. Andrea and her family would summer on Balboa Island, and 25 years ago, they decided to build a home on Balboa Island for Coach and her, enjoying their lives together with their 10 grandkids. Andrea never knew a stranger, and everyone thought they were her best friend. What a gift she was to so many, and her encouragement around Newport, all will be very missed. She was a true legend and someone that I'll miss greatly. Okay, now's the time for public comments on closed session items. Are there any public comments on closed session matters?
Mayor Stapleton and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosher, and I appreciate this Brown Act required opportunity to comment on closed session item Roman numeral 16A. But if you look at that item, you will notice it does not reveal what you're going to be talking about. So it is rather difficult for the public to use this opportunity to actually tell you anything that might influence your decision on whatever it is you're going to be talking about. The item says possibility of initiating litigation, but it does not say what the litigation could be. I have heard that our city attorney sometimes is asked by a council member to consider suing somebody and wants to hold a closed session to see if the remainder of the council agrees. I don't know if that's the reason in this case or what the reason is for not disclosing this. The Brown Act, actually, it's a quirk in the Brown Act. It allows you to not disclose what the subject of the meeting is, but it does not require that. And for those of you who have not been on the council a long time, I wanted to let you know that we did have a previous city attorney who experimented with actually telling the public what litigation it was that you were considering initiating. In my view, it never harmed the city or the public in any way to be revealing that. If you go back and look at the video of the June 14th, 2011 meeting, I think it is, you will see that the agenda announced that the city was considering litigation against the late Dennis Holland, who was a renowned boat builder, but was in trouble for not completing the boat that he had in his yard. And as a result of the announcement, there was a band of people dressed as pirates who came defending Mr. Holland before the city council. The city council went ahead with initiating litigation, but I don't think it hurt anybody to hear that comment. So I do not know why we're not being told what we have to comment on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on closed session? Is this related to closed session matters?
What is closed session matters?
That's fine. Item A is conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, and item B is conference with labor negotiations. Okay, terrific. All right, seeing none, we'll now go to closed session. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session announcement?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Stapleton. The City Council adjourned to closed session to meet with legal counsel regarding the possible initiation of litigation in regard to one matter, and to meet the city's labor negotiators regarding negotiations with those unions set forth under item 16B. Thank you.
Terrific. We're recessed. Thank you.
Sorry about that, gang. We came here for other purposes other than that. But sorry.
Love it. Okay, we're back in session. Mr. Harp, is there a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no closed session report this evening.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.